Hello everyone, my name is Quinn Noble, also known as Silverhawk, and for my first video of 2021, I'm going to give you a tour of my video game room. So sit back, relax, and let's jump into it. I thought it would be cool to start the year off by documenting my video game collection. As we start 2021, my collection consists of 1,268 video games spanning across 28 different systems. That doesn't even count digital games, which is all we are going to have in the future. Some of these are my original systems and games from when I was a kid. I'm going to take you through my game collection and highlight some of my favorite titles and pieces. If you're into that sort of thing and haven't done so already, be sure to click the subscribe button for more game-related content. First up is my Microsoft Xbox collection. The original Xbox is the first console I can ever remember being able to mod. My favorite game for the Xbox, and also one of my favorite games of all time, would have to be Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. I spent countless hours exploring every nook and cranny of every planet the game had to offer. And it looks now as though we may see some expanded stories from this universe from Disney. Fans of this series are looking for a remastered version somewhere down the line, and I am sure one day we will get it. Next are the Xbox 360 games, and I never had an Xbox 360 when it was the current gen system. I was a PS3 guy. But eventually I got one and started collecting. During the pandemic, I hooked up the Kinect and played all the titles I have. But my most played 360 game is a shoot 'em up called Death Smiles. I believe it was Metal Jesus that brought my attention to this one, and I have to say thanks for that. Often I run into old strategy guides when I'm out thrifting and game hunting. I mainly collect for the games that I've already played through. I found this neat magazine rack at a Goodwill. It reminds me of one I've seen in my dentist's office when I was younger. It makes for a nice display piece. I have two favorite systems I collect for. The first is the original Nintendo Entertainment System. This was the first system I ever had, and I love the fact that you can play a lot of these games in just under an hour. I'm also having fun attempting to speedrun some of these titles. If you haven't seen any of my speedrunning videos, I'll put a card to one above. There are a lot of great titles for this system, but there are also some bad ones. I do plan on minimizing my collection to the games I play or will play. My favorite game to play growing up was any of the Mega Man titles. I had them all at one point, and I sold them all for about $100. This isn't the case anymore, but I was able to obtain all 6 games this year. As NES Complex would say, side quest complete. Well guys, the cat's out of the bag. Your boy has a crush on Mega Man, and here is my Mega Man shrine. The shrine includes pop figures as well as a Pez dispenser, which are two things I also collect. My favorite of these is my Bit Brigade Mega Man 2 colored vinyl record. If you aren't familiar with Bit Brigade, they are a video game cover band. I had the pleasure of seeing them live at Dragon Con in 2019, and I was hooked after that. And if you want proof, well, according to my Spotify Wrapped, they were my top artist of 2020, and I listened to them for 408 minutes. Also at Dragon Con, I came across a great artist named Andrew Heath. He did this Super Mario 3 print as well as the Mega Man prints in my shrine. I now have 4 of his prints hanging up in my place. I'll put a link to his site in the description. Here are my Super Nintendo and Nintendo 64 games. I wish I had a better way to display them. I've made a makeshift shelf with some PC games which are more for show than anything. I have a few Pixel Pals, and over here is my minuscule Nintendo Switch collection. I just got my Switch in 2020, so that has been fun to start collecting for. I also have some boxed Super Nintendo games and Nintendo 64 games as well. If you look closely, you'll see a Goodwill sticker for $1.99. That was about 5 years ago, and I'm convinced I will never find a boxed Nintendo 64 game in a thrift store again. Here I have my display shelf of handheld consoles. The original Game Boy was the second console I ever owned, and my mom still rocks Tetris to this day, so shout out to her. Next to that is the new Game & Watch, and if you haven't seen my review of that, I'll put a card to it right here. Also, I have a 3DS, a DS, a PSP, a Vita, a Game Boy Color, and a Sega Game Gear. Which brings me to my question of the video: what is your favorite handheld console and why? Let me know down in the comments. One of my favorite consoles to collect for is the Nintendo GameCube. I had one of these when they came out, and though it wasn't as powerful as the Xbox or the PS2, I preferred playing it over the others because of the wireless Wavebird controller. Man, Nintendo really got it right with this bad boy. This was the first wireless controller that worked and lasted for hours. Be sure to pick one of these up if you find it cheap in the wild, because they are going for a pretty penny. That is if you have the dongle. Here are some DS, 3DS, and Wii games. My more coveted Wii games are on this Wii Tower that I found at the Goodwill bins. I had to clean it up, but the end result is quite nice. Which Wii game is my favorite? Well, that's easy. I have a nostalgic soft spot for Punch-Out, which brings me to the next pieces in my game room. I started painting these Punch-Out portraits as a series several years ago. So far I have done Piston Honda, King Hippo, and Bald Bull, which is the first and my favorite of the three. I've been wanting to paint some more, but I have never gotten to it. I've also wanted to make these into prints at some point. Maybe someday I'll do that. I found this Todd McFarlane Cyberpunk 2077 figure in a video recently. I'll put the link to that right here. I don't think anyone thought that it was going to have such a rough launch, yet here we are. The Wii U didn't have a very long lifespan, but I was able to collect quite a few of its games. I have played some of them, but none more than Super Mario Maker. I have the second one on the Switch, and I prefer this one, to be honest. This game rarely leaves the system. Over here I have some more systems. This is the Jungle Green Donkey Kong Nintendo 64. I'm also on the Mini System fan train, the Sega Genesis, Super Nintendo, and Nintendo Classic Mini consoles. And finally over here we have a Sega Saturn, which was given to me by my good buddy Johnny. The console wars have been going on for a long time. Now it's PS5 versus Xbox Series X, but it really started with the Super Nintendo and the Sega Genesis. They were two completely different consoles. The Genesis had some killer music, and it also had little something called blast processing, which makes it one of my favorite consoles to collect for. There's nothing like sitting down on a CRT TV and playing some of these classics, many of them exclusive to the Genesis.
Genesis does. Genesis does. Genesis does. Genesis does. Genesis does. What Nintendo don't.
My favorite series on the Sega Genesis is Streets of Rage. I was able to find this cool pixel art at my favorite local game shop, Games for Less. One good thing 2020 brought us was the fourth installment in the series, and I picked up a physical copy from Limited Run Games. I had all of them but the third, which is the rarest and priciest of them all. Luckily, I was able to snag one off eBay at a decent price, thus completing my collection. Another side quest complete. I keep my Streets of Rage games as well as some of my favorite items in my collection in this glass display case. Here is one of my favorite games growing up, and that is Bonk's Adventure for the TurboGrafx 16. The worst part of this game is that it is only one player. We had a family get together at my uncle's house when this game first came out, and me and my cousins John and Chad would fight over who got to play next. At the time I was so mad when I wasn't playing, but funny how years later it makes a great memory. I love collecting for the TurboGrafx 16. It is simply one of my favorite systems of all time. Unfortunately, the games are very hard to come by and also very expensive. I sold my TurboGrafx at some point, but this one was given to me by my buddy Johnny. The same Johnny who gave me the Sega Saturn. He just gave it to me. So I have to give a shout out to Johnny, who watches his channel with his kids, Johnny Jr. and Claire. So thanks again, Johnny. It's people like you who inspire me to keep the channel going. Here are some of my favorite games, along with some of my most prized possessions. I found this glass display case at a thrift shop, and it had a sign on it that said free. And free is for me. I added the LED lights, which are Philips Hue, and it makes for a nice centerpiece that ties my game room together nicely. This is my gaming nook. It's pretty comfy and cozy, and I come here often to play some of these old games as they were intended to be played on an old school CRT TV. Yes sir, I came across this Sony Trinitron when I was giving my bandmate Brad a ride home from practice. It was sitting on the curb by one of his neighbor's house, and he asked me if I thought it even worked. I had my doubts, but the fact that the remote was just resting on top, there was a glimmer of hope. I got home and tested it, and it worked gloriously. I keep a few of these old school consoles hooked up to this automatic switcher. Just turn on the system and the switcher will detect it. Some of my PSP and Vita games. My favorite PSP game is Castlevania: The Dracula X Chronicles, and this includes a port of the two rare Castlevania games, Rondo of Blood and Symphony of the Night. On this CD rack I have all my PlayStation 1 games as well as my Dreamcast collection. There are also a couple TurboGrafx games, a couple Saturn games, and a boxed Game Boy game as well. Of course, after the PS1 comes the PS2, and it seems as if I find more PS2 games out in the wild than any other console. Well, that and Xbox 360. I don't want to seem unsatisfied though, because I know in a few years even PS2 games will be hard to come by. The PS3 had some great titles, and I definitely played that system a lot. One game in particular took a great deal of my time, and that is Red Dead Redemption. Forget hours, I sunk days into this game. I was able to get a 98.9 completion rate, and one of my roommates accidentally saved over my file. Honestly, I feel like this was my fault. It was this moment that I learned to create multiple saves. Remember earlier when I said I have two favorite consoles to collect for? Well, the second one is the PS4. This is largely because of the stellar console exclusives like Spider-Man and God of War. It's also because of third parties manufacturing small quantities of indie games for the system, making collectors like me thirsty for more. Companies like I Am 8-Bit, Limited Run Games, and Strictly Limited Games have been turning quality digital titles into something that you can hold in your hand. It's as if they get people like me. Some have reversible choices for cover art. Some come with trading cards. Some come with soundtracks. Some even come with apologies. Every once in a blue moon, they'll put out an indie game on the VR. One thing is for sure, if they keep making them, we'll keep buying them.
Shut up and take my money!
As we draw to a close, I want to show you my holy grail item. Every collection has one, and for me, it is this Marvel vs. Capcom 2 arcade machine. I picked this baby up on Craigslist a few years back, and I gotta say, it is my favorite piece of my collection. It reminds me of the days I used to spend in the arcades, and I get excited every time that Character Select song comes on. My favorite team of characters to use is Ryu, Akuma, and Zangief. But I guess that's just because I'm old school Street Fighter like that. Well, I hope you enjoyed my game room tour of 2021. If you did, take a second to hit that like button as it helps with the algorithm of my channel. If you aren't subscribed yet, take a moment to do that so you can join in on all the fun we're gonna have next time. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next video. Catch you later.